In the recent decade, we've seen the emergence of the survival genre. It began endorsing a revolutionary concept, a world that can change, a world that's no longer static. Players can shape it with players-made structures. Games like Rust, Scum, Fallout 76, Worm Unlimited, Minecraft, Ark Survival, Conan Exiles, DayZ, Life is Feudal, and the recent success story, Valheim, just to name a few. All those survival games come built in with those kind of tools. Players are being so creative, they don't just build their own houses. We see hotels, taverns, clinics, temples, merchant shops. Heck, players are building entire towns and communities from scratch.
So that's our bridge. One of the first big structures we built. It was actually really challenging to figure out our compound that we've been working on for the last week and a half. It's really come a long way.
Like, next time these guys log in, we're probably going to be walled in.
That would be
like
amazing.
100%, because the amount of progress that they have right here is insane.
This is like about a third. Oh, hello.
Look at this. All the way down.
I'm going to be showcasing a massive settlement that my buddies and I decided to make.
Give players power, and they will do amazing things. You probably know the old phrase, if you build it, they will come. Well, how about a new spin? If you let them build it, they will come. Instead of world builders building every minute detail, nowadays we don't actually need them to build the whole world for us when we can be given the tools to do it ourselves. And that's what modern games let you do. And those games are only the beginning. Meet the Vampires is planning to have not just players-made structures, but massive siege battles.
Build a new homeland and forge a brighter future. Claim your territory. Put an end to the chaos.
Back in the old days, I would occasionally shoot a wall to see if I can break it. No matter which weapon, at some point I would just end up hurting myself, and the wall remained intact. No matter what I do, I couldn't break it. But now, I can. This is amazing to me. The world has become our oyster. The limit has become our imagination. We are literally starting to break through the walls that defined the 90s and early 2000s, where our game worlds were narrow and static, when we were restricted by the edifices the creators set out, forced into a kind of linearity. Powerless prisoners of the landscape, burdened to travel in worlds where our physical action couldn't change our environment. Well, our worlds are no longer static, our experience no longer confined to those past barriers. We are the builders, we are the destroyers, we are the territorial shift shapers, changers of worlds. But I'm not glorifying survival games just because I think they're cool, but rather, I think that gives us an amazing storytelling potential. Indeed, I would like to believe that's how we'll be making great powerful stories in the future. We can be that crazy druid in the forest if we wanted to. Form rogue communities, fanatic cults, knightly orders, all by ourselves. All this can happen organically. It also gives us the power to populate the game world portraying NPCs and not just the wandering heroes. Kinda like Dr. C.J. Martin did in Fallout 76. He used such tools to build a clinic and plays off as this NPC-like doctor character. Although in a non-role-playing environment, he still makes it work. I even made a video about him.
What you're witnessing right now is the only real full-time NPC in this game. That would be me, Dr. C.J. Martin.
The best doc in Appalachia.
I think about the powers that players have in a hierarchy of tiers. In Tier 1, players have no power. Like in the MMOs of old, the only thing that players can change is their characters. The ultimate, prisoners of the landscape. Then there is Tier 2, where quite a bit more power to the players is granted. Tier 2 is all about players-run guilds, and it's the most ubiquitous sort. We see it everywhere in role-playing servers that don't have native world-building tools. Players playing as a part of a Knights Guild with their own citadel, or even as police officers. Players will have power within the domain of their guild or the scope of their job, but they still can't do any world building themselves. Any changes in the game world architecture are still done by the server admins. Then there is Tier 3, the actual player's world building tier, which lifts the limitations of the old and grants players the power to administer change in the landscape through building, terraforming, up to maybe even owning NPCs. While the games mentioned previously have some form of it, for multiplayer it really only exists for the sake of arcade gameplay. That is, players use it for building bases and fighting off each other in popular games like Rust, or just try to build ridiculous structures all by themselves for fun and enjoy it more as a solo experience. For server admins, Tier 1 and 2 are relatively easy to manage and balance because players can't really do anything to change the makeup of the game world without the game owners having a say. But in Tier 3, they can. And the problem with that is that players are notoriously unpredictable. They can completely break down systems. In Ultima Online, players there broke a virtual ecology just because the game developers couldn't predict their behavior.
You know, players could kill either the herbivores, which we thought in our mind's eye they wouldn't do very much because there wasn't much value in those herbivores. And instead we assumed that they would tend to fight the carnivores, not only because the carnivores would be attacking them, but also we had created quests to where the pelts of the carnivores were worth more. What we discovered the moment the game went live was that players ran over the world like a swarm of ants that consumed every living thing as fast as it was possible to spawn it. They killed every creature. So as soon as a deer or a rabbit or a wolf showed up on the map, the nearest person to it killed it, skinned it, took its meat and took its hide instantaneously. And the fact that the wolf was worth more than the deer or the rabbit was irrelevant. Just the fact that it was fun to kill would have been enough for them to eradicate all life, all living things on the surface.
So, the real challenge is to maintain the balance and playability of the game world despite the players having that level of power and influence over the world. I believe we should strive to give more power to the players, because along with permadeath, power to the players is another cardinal suture in the embroidery that brings us ever closer to living out stories that feel more real, more substantive, stories with a great sense of history and connection to the world. That, in essence, creates a whole new level of immersion, of meaningful storytelling, and give characters something real to defend, something that they toiled to build. In such a world, everything you build and everything you break has consequences. If done right, with that kind of power, it's not just the players that tell stories, but the world itself becomes a storyteller. The very earth will have whispered of what was. Tales shall be engraved in the woods and etched in the stones, of those who lived, those who died, of the footprints they left behind, of the ruins of an old town that was once a thriving community, of a worn-out old statue, or a road that was never finished. Such a world would live and breathe the stories of who we are and the kind of characters that we choose to play.